a lot of that can stem from not having a clear set goal, not having a clear plan. I want to retire. When do you want to retire? I don't know, but I want to retire. I want to retire with a lot of money. How much is a lot of money? I don't know, but I want a lot of it. And so without anything concrete, it's just kind of abstract. That can be very scary for people, because if they don't have a goal, if they don't have a plan, how do they know enough is enough? I'm putting away 20% of my income, but I don't know if it's going to be enough for retirement. Let's bump it up to 25, and you're eating rice and beans or something, for the rest of your life. So that plan, that goal is very specific to the person and where they think they want to go in the future. It's a fella in BNI that comes in here and does it for us.
Okay. Yeah, I kind of wish, I kind of wish I had a personal setup or, an in-person setup, but then also too, man, being virtual, you can talk to literally anybody, like anywhere,
Yeah.
And there's several different, I talk about this sometimes on the podcast. There's several different like platforms out there. I think StreamYard is one, Riverside is one. Some people use Zoom for podcasting. I'm not really crazy about Zoom specifically for podcasting, but yeah, I mean, once you go that virtual route, man, it's like, it really opens up doors to talk to different people. But yeah, the in-person stuff, I've actually never, I want to make sure I'm saying this right. Yeah, I've actually never done one in person.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Well, hey, when we get you on our episode, that'll be in person, right?
Yeah, for sure. That'd be exciting. But yeah, man, I'm excited to talk to you. I know you got some things going on over there. You got a brand new book and everything. So if you want to introduce yourself, kind of just tell us who you are, what you do, anything you want to share, and preface the conversation. We'll go from there.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Thanks for having us on. We really appreciate it. Ryan Templeton. I am a certified financial planner, certified Kingdom advisor, in South Carolina, local, born and raised here. I am fortunate enough to work with my father. We own a financial planning practice up where we are. And man, that's what we do. We help people get from point A to point B with the financial planning. And when the roadblocks come up or when the speed bumps come up, we got the guardrails in place to help them stay on track. So.
I like that. I like guardrails. That's the first time I've heard of that. That way.
Good.
Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy, man. So so I know you said financial planning. What do you guys like? What does that mean?
Yeah. So that's a great question. So financial planning is different depending on who the person is and what stage of life they're in. Okay. So, we do financial planning for businesses. There's a guy who he's self-employed. He's just himself. Or there's a guy who's got, a team of 15 people and they need to either get like a retirement plan put in place. They need those assets managed. They need somebody to come in and talk about like life insurance. We do all that for like the business owners. Then if we've got families that have young children and they're saying, hey, I want to pay for school one day, we can do some financial planning for college. If we've got individuals that don't own businesses, but they're thinking, hey, I want to retire in 20, 30, 40 years. This is kind of what I want life to look like at retirement. How do I get there? We can help with that. And, that's all going to look vastly different if it's a 20-year-old with a family, a 20-year-old with a business versus a 60-year-old with a family and a 60-year-old with a business. They're going to be in vastly different places, going to need a lot of different types of planning for those two people.
This episode is brought to you by Excel Coaching Academy. Hey guys, I'm really excited to let you know that I started a mindset coaching business. So what I want to do with this business is I want to help entrepreneurs, business owners, salespeople, leaders, and fitness enthusiasts or athletes develop the right mindset to increase revenue, improve business or performance, and overcome the challenges needed to become the best version of themselves. You can get more information about this by emailing info@excelcoaching.academy. I got you. Yeah, that makes sense. And that's also kind of encouraging to hear because I've heard before that finance is not like a one size fits all. Right. Like what works for one person may not work for another person. And obviously, there's successful blueprints that people have followed. But I think sort of the same philosophy that something that I talk about a lot is something like fitness or, self-improvement. These things are, yes, there's blueprints, there's certain things that work that you can do, but it's not like a one size fits all. Like, for example, an easy example is like you hear the average millionaire is up at like 5 a.m. or something.
Right. Yeah.
If I'm up at 5 a.m., I'm not getting almost anything done until about 9. You know what I mean? So it's
Right.
I would much rather be the person that's working at midnight, you know what I mean? Like late
Yes.
during the day versus early. So it's just like you have to find that thing that really works for you.
Mhm.
And I think it's encouraging to hear that there are different, scenarios or routes a person could take for their financial future. I think that's really encouraging. So I guess a little bit of what that might include would be things like debt, maybe getting out of debt or, debt planning at least.
Yeah, so there's a lot of stuff that goes into it. So it basically starts with, kind of financial snapshot. Hey, where are you? What do you have going on?
Mm,
Do you have a car loan? Do you have a mortgage? Do you have student loans? Okay, we got the debts picture. We've got that taken care of. What's your income look like? Do you have any assets? Does your employer offer a plan? We get that picture. And then another one, which we hate this word, but it's a word that you've got to have, is a budget.
hmm.
Everybody hears the word budget and they're tense up because that's not a fun thing to have.
Yep.
But we talk about that, and so with the financial planning, it could be as simple as, hey, we need help with a budget, or it could be as complex as, hey, we've got you know these investments. Are we overweighted in one sector? Do we need to diversify? Stuff like that, and everything in between, including debt repayment. Which debts do we need to attack? Why do we need to attack those debts first? Stuff like that.
Okay. Yeah. So I've had a couple conversations like this on the podcast, and there's been this. I think I don't know who started this or who made this like publicly known. The philosophy of like taking the smallest debt and sort of taking that first, and then going to a bigger debt or whatever. Just to get a little bit of momentum built up. But as you're saying this, man, I'm thinking because. And I'm sort of in this space too with the coaching, like, with the mindset coaching and stuff. And I told somebody this one time, I was like, man, I bet entrepreneurs and business owners are probably some of the most difficult people to work with because they sort of want to do their own thing and kind of go their own way, and we're just by nature, we're just independent people, we kind of want to do our
Yeah.
own thing and create something. Um, but it's like, so in the coaching space, like I said, like my personal journey, I remember like even to this day, even like it would be hard for me to, I don't want to say limit yourself, but that's kind of what a budget is. It's like you're putting, it almost feels like you're putting a constraint on your vision.
Mm.
You know what I mean? So like as a business owner or entrepreneur, you have this grand vision, you want to do all these great things, but then you're working with a limited budget that kind of lets you only do certain things. So I think that's at least like my experience has been with the budget thing and kind of like limiting the spending and stuff. It's like, man, well, I just feel like if I spend more, I can, get a bigger vision or get closer to the vision or something. So I guess
Sure.
that's kind of like the science of, making it all work.
Yeah.
But I guess that's why like people that like are the innovators are not really like an innovator of a company or an idea is usually not the good person to manage it once it gets to that place. You know what I mean?
Sure.
I mean,
Sure. And I'm glad you brought that up because that is something to think about. Budget does have that negative connotation, and like I've
mhm,
got to I've got to limit myself and stuff. But it's a different story if you're a business owner or you're an entrepreneur and you're spending to like grow that. That's a
okay,
completely different story. Normally the budget type stuff we see is I make $100 a week and I'm spending $115 a week. And it's like, hey, that's a problem, right? And it's
right.
like, and I don't own a business. I'm a W-2 employee somewhere. It's
Mm.
like, all right, yeah, we've got a problem here. Yeah. No, so I agree with what you were saying.
Yeah, that's well, I guess that is a good point, man, because what's crazy is I don't want to get off on the education system. I beat the education system up on this podcast, but I don't know why we were not taught this in like high school, like very basic education, like as far as debt. Because how many people do you know in your career, in your industry, that come to you and immediately as soon as they get a credit card, it's maxed out on something that's not like a business. It's not something that's going to make more money or an investment, but something that, whatever, like
Yes.
just
Yes.
like mindless. just pointless spending, basically. Because I know I definitely did. I got my first
Yeah.
credit card, man. I was like, oh yeah, and it was not. Look, the limit that I got was probably not good to give me at the time. Like
Yeah.
it was not good for, but some of the things that I put on there, I don't know, maybe 25% for business expense. The other one
Yep.
was like, new pair of shoes, whatever. And it was just like,
Yes.
but how many times do you hear that story from people that like,
Oh, yeah. I would fully say 100% of the people that come in that have a debt or the debt is a priority, fully 100% of those people, there's at least some of it involved with a credit card. Like we've
yeah,
had probably the saddest story I've ever had was there was a lady who came in. We met. She was 62 years old. She wanted to retire at 64, right before she got Medicare. She wanted to retire at 64, and she had no savings, and she had two maxed out credit cards. I think the total was like $33,000.
oh wow,
And she's like, I want to retire in 2 years. And it's like, I don't
yeah,
think you're going to be able to retire in 2 years. You don't have anything saved up. You've got to pay down this debt, and the credit cards, I don't remember the exact number. So let's just say it was at like 12, 13%. So, I mean, it was
right.
building up. So,
Gosh, man, that's just when you put it that way, that's kind of intimidating,
mhm.
Which I think I don't know. And I'm not in this space, so maybe I can't really comment. But like the people that I've known in this space, it's like one or two reactions. It's either they are terrified of debt and they just will stay away from it, in any case possible, or they just either don't care about it or maybe you're not educated about it, which is what I'm going to say is probably the case. They're not educated because again, we don't learn. This isn't something we learn in basic education. And so they just don't know, and they just max out these, and they don't know what it like when you max out, just say something 10%, just say $3,000. When you max out 3,000, they don't understand the interest and all that. And then a lot of times you make the payment, and it's really just, I mean, if you make the minimum payment, you're never going to pay that thing off. It's
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
and so, but again, I think just the awareness of this, if we just had that little bit of awareness to about debt or maxing out or whatever, if we were just taught that, who knows how that would help us. But yeah, I feel like it's those two directions is where people kind of go. And I don't know, I feel like being terrified of debt is kind of too extreme because again, I mean, you're gonna need a house, you're gonna need a
Yeah.
car. I mean,
Yeah. So man, I'm glad you brought that up. You'll find people, and we found people in this industry that are debt is evil, stay
mm,
away from it, don't ever touch it. And then there are other people where it's like, no, hey, debt can be used. Like I'm glad you brought up the house. Like if you're afraid of debt, probably never going to buy a house because you're afraid of that mortgage. So 30 years go by, a house could be paid for and you'd have an
yeah,
asset you could sell, but you don't have anything because you just rented for 30 years. Like that would be
hmm
a negative. And then, you know, I'm a little apprehensive to say this, but I'll say it anyway. Like debt can be a good thing,
hmm
especially if it's like debt that pays you. So like,
right,
you buy a rental property, you own a business and you go and you merge with another business or you acquire another business, and you got to take on some debt for that. If it's debt that's making you some money, it might not be very comfortable, but it's not, I wouldn't call it bad, right?
yeah.
I'd say that's a good debt.
Yeah, and I think, and that's actually a really good point because I think that's when people say that, like people that own businesses, entrepreneurs, they take all the risk. I think that's one of the ways that they do take the risk because if you have a business, you invest this money, whether it's a loan or whatever, and you sign that line, that's essentially you're saying. I mean, I went to multiple banks for a loan for this type of reason, and it's like, oh well, yes, it's the business, but if you are what's it called like you're the person who pays if the business doesn't pay it back. What's that called? A guarantor or something,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
something like that.
guarantee your
I'm
money.
not really in the banking space, but anyway, you pay for that if it's not, you're the person that's responsible. Basically, is what it comes down to. But I think you're right that debt that you can use to as a business or as an investment. That makes me think. So I think I heard a quote one time like a company should spend. I think it's like the number I heard was like 5%, which really sounds high to be honest with you. But 5% of your gross revenue should be used for marketing or something along those
Oh,
lines.
yeah.
Do you know, is there like an equation or a figure just kind of thrown around as far as like how much you should use to I guess what like, is there, because, when you go to a bank and you get a loan and they're looking for your debt to income, is there a certain number you're looking for as far as a business goes? Like, should you have, I don't know, 20% debt or whatever, as far as your, what would it be? I guess it would be debt to income, your business debt, and then your business revenue. Is there like a magic, like a sweet spot you want to stay around as far as like long-term finance? Or do you know?
No, it depends on what stage you're on and stuff like that, right? Because if you're an early business, you're probably going to have higher debt than you are, substantially higher debt than revenue, versus somebody who's been in the game for 20, 30 years or whatever. I don't think that there's a magic number what it's supposed to be. Now, I'm sure you could find people that are very adamant about, hey, it needs to be this number.
Right.
Personally, I don't think there is. I think it depends on where you are in the time frame of your business.
That does make a lot of sense, because I feel like the younger the business is, the more you're going to be probably in debt.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a good point.
And that's kind of natural thing too. The older we get, the more the average person gets more risk averse the older we get. And so if you've got a 60-year-old who's thinking about selling the business, they're probably not wanting to have a lot of debt in that business. But then you got a 20-year-old who is wanting to they're wanting to grow this business. They're probably pretty comfortable being substantially leveraged with the business.
Yeah. I can kind of see that, because I was 20 when I started my landscaping company. But I don't know, man. I think the one way to get over that, I guess maybe fear of debt, of good debt, like business debt, is one way is awareness. But I think also too, one way is the increasing maybe the self-confidence of the person that's involved, that they can make this thing happen. Because but it's like, it's a very intimidating thing for a person to start a business or do something like that, like a really life-changing event, and say, hey, I'm going to invest this money into this, or I'm going to borrow this money for this thing. I mean, that's a pretty, like, a lot of people that do that start those things, they don't have really people around them that support that. Because I mean, you hear the very typical story is like, oh, my family doesn't want me to do this because they don't want me to lose my money and all this. And that comes from a place of love most of the time. It comes from a place of love. And I get that, but it's like, man, that is a very heavy weight for a person to feel that and to go through with that anyways. That leads into the whole self-confidence thing and all that. But so this book, so we were talking about this book. I wanted to read this book. Here's what I need to do. This is my plan. I'm going to find a book on how to read books at 10x the speed, and then I'm going to, because I was telling you, like, I got so many books to read, man. I got like at least no shortage of 5 books to read. And I do honestly want to read them all so I can talk to the people about them. But I'm just like, man, I'm just inundated with Bill Gates over here reading a book a week every year.
Yeah. Listen to this now. So I'm glad you brought that up, because there's a in our, we're both in BNI. We've talked about that before and stuff. In our chapter, the education coordinator will basically rotate each week who does the education moment. Well, my week came up, and it was I was just doing the next podcast that popped up, and it was on AI. And I was thinking, I can talk about this podcast, but what if I got AI to help me out with it? And so what I did is I had the podcast, had it listen into double speed. AI made notes of it. I put it into Chat GPT and just said, hey, print this out, a 5-minute education moment. And then I was able to say, hey, look, AI made this. So if you can figure out something to just, read the book for you, man, you'd be golden.
Oh, man, listen. Well, all right, there are a couple things of that. I'm about to change your life right here. There's a couple things. I think you can go to, like, so I use Perplexity. I don't use Chat GPT. Perplexity is an AI, and it's like it's made for like research and stuff. The difference is, like, Chat GPT, all AI really makes mistakes. It misreferences things. But Perplexity offers like the source of where the information came from, and a lot of like colleges and stuff are using it. But you can ask it to summarize a book, and that's okay and everything. But you're talking about the podcast, about to change your life, man. So there's a website called I think it's called Dexa, DEXA.
Yeah.
I think that's what it's called. But it's basically an AI that will summarize different podcasts.
What?
Yeah. I might have to we're live right now. I don't want to bring my phone out, but I think
Sure.
it's like Dexa or something. I'll put it in the description to this. But
Oh man, thank you.
it's basically an AI system, and you ask it a question, and it'll pull up, it'll reference different podcasts or whatever, and it'll basically, you can ask it to summarize a person's podcast. Oh yeah, it's great, man. If you know,
That's awesome.
now I
I've
don't
never
know.
heard of that.
Yeah, I mean, dude, AI is everywhere. Like it's just everywhere. And I don't know, I don't probably want to get into it right now, but I've talked about AI and how I feel about it, and I think it's okay as long as we use it as a tool and we don't let it use us. You know what I mean? Because like you hear people talking about like writing college papers and stuff like that. I mean, at that point, are you really learning the material?
Sure. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, and I think one thing that does scare me too about AI is taking away the creativity from that we as people. I mean, so the way this is my understanding of how this AI stuff works. It searches the internet for things related to what you just asked it, and that's how it gives you the answer. Now, what it searches is like things that we as people have put onto the internet. So yes, we've already created that, but like at the same time, like you're hearing it, it's writing, it's doing paintings, writing songs and stuff, and I'm just like, man, and it, like even these pictures and stuff that it, like some of them are like very like cartoon like, the hyper realistic ones, it's still kind of off, like something's not quite like I saw one and AI did like a handshake and there were like 4 different hands involved or whatever,
Yeah.
but but yeah, man, I don't know, I'm kind of concerned about that, as long as we don't, like I said, as long as we don't become the machine and let AI use us. I think because people, I don't know, people are really going crazy with it. They're using it for everything. But yeah, I mean, long story short, yeah, you can summarize podcasts.
Yeah. That's cool.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's Dexa or so. I'll send it to you. I'll put it in the chat.
Appreciate it.
I had a follow up to that. We got on a tangent. Listen, I don't know if I told you this or not, but I've been known to go off on some tangents
That's
like
perfect.
I'll hear a thing, man. I tell people about this all the time. I hear a thing and then I want to explore it. And it's like, well, sometimes I feel like I shouldn't because people like to have a little bit of a direction. But at the same time, we're all unique. And so the probability that somebody has that same question that I have might be very low. So that conversation might not ever happen again if I don't ask it.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely. No, that makes perfect sense. That makes perfect sense.
but yeah, you were talking about the BNI and the podcast, and we were talking about books. Yeah, man, I really wanted to read your book. I wanted to get into that. So, do you have like what is the book like? What does it focus on? I guess would be the question.
Yeah, yeah. If you're cool with it, man, I can just give like an overview of it, and some different ins and outs and everything, and kind of go from there.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
It's a short book. It was a short book by design. We wanted somebody to be able to pick it up and put it down. 2 days, they're done with it, something like that. We looked at it the other day. I think there's 124 pages in this thing, 9
Okay.
chapters. It's not a big book at all. That was by design. We didn't want anything that was a big, heavy read or anything that was technical. But really, what this book is about is how do you set your goals for the future? How do you plan for the future? How do you execute the steps for that goal for the future without sacrificing today? And we get into like, what exactly does that mean, sacrificing today? Are you becoming a miser because you're saving so much money you don't have, you're basically house poor today because you're putting everything into the future? Or, is your marriage falling apart because you never take your spouse on a date because you're so, been out of shape about saving for the future? And so there's some of those themes. And then we go through what we call the Templeton process, where we kind of list out the steps we use for financial planning for our clients that actually come to the Templeton group. And so that's a 1,000-foot view of it. How do we plan for tomorrow? How do we set those goals? How do we execute? How do we do that while being content without sacrificing today?
Man, that's the fact that you guys were able to do that in 124 pages is like crazy, because that's a very that's a big question, because I think that is excuse me, I think that is a big fear for people. Like, it's this fear of missing out. Saving for the future means you have to do less now and all that. So I think that's a pretty big question to address for people.
Yeah.
So you mentioned the sort of I guess it talks about a plan for the future.
Yeah. So some of the stress that we'll see from people, and some of those people that are, they're turning into misers today, because they're the way that they're planning for the future. A lot of that can stem from not having a clear set goal, not having
Mm.
a clear plan. I want to retire. When do you want to retire? I don't know, but I want to retire. I want to retire with a lot of money. How much is a lot of money? I don't know, but I want a lot of it. And so without anything concrete, it's just kind of abstract, that can be very scary for people, because if they don't have a goal, if they don't have a plan, how do they know enough is enough? I'm putting away 20% of my income, but I don't know if it's going to be enough for retirement. Let's bump it up to 25, and you're eating rice and beans or something,
Mhm.
for the rest of your life. So, um, that plan, that goal is very specific to the person and where they think they want to go in the future. And the beautiful thing about it is, you made a mention earlier. Financial planning isn't a one shoe fits all. That's absolutely right. It's also not a one and done. It's not you make a plan at 20, and then you just at 65 you either made it or you didn't. You tweak that plan as life happens. Marriages, divorces, birth of children, life changes. You lose a job, somebody gets disabled, you start taking care of a elderly parent, or whatever the case is. Like, things will change, and so the beautiful thing about it is we don't have to build out anything abstract. You can make a plan today for the future, and then next year or the 2 years after, if something's changed, you just adjust that plan again. You can breathe, you don't have to stress out about anything, and just adapt the plan as we go.
Man, I love to hear you say that, because everything that you're saying right now really aligns to like, if you're coaching somebody through goals, if somebody has a problem with like achieving goals or setting a plan for themselves, is I tell people all the time that you have this thing, you have this destination that you want to end up at, and you have a journey that you think is going to get you there. But dude, if it's 5 or 10 years away, that path might change as you're going, and that's okay. Like, that's okay. Like, as long as you stay committed to the end goal, and you know where you want to go, you don't. And that's also, man, that's such a good point, because that's also something that really stops people from starting to begin with. Is they're like, man, this thing is, I want to have $1 million saved, or whatever it is. I want to have this goal, and I'm just so far away from it, and they just get paralyzed by analyzing that so much.
Dude,
But
yes.
it's like you don't have to know how you're going to do it. That will come to you. You just have to know that you are going to do it, and just take that first step. Because a lot of times, and I don't know about in the financial space, but a lot of times in the fitness space, entrepreneur space, um, sometimes that first step is the hardest. It's like, this is a really simple example for a lot of people, easy to understand. The gym, getting into the gym for a lot of people is the hardest thing. And then
Yeah.
once they get in there, they get comfortable with it. They kind of, get familiar with it, and then they're there. But yeah, that's a really good point, because I think you're right. That path to the destination might change, and that's okay.
Yeah, there was man, you oh yeah, it was the paralysis. So, like, um in this industry, behavioral finance, you've probably heard that term before. That used to be, man, that's cuckoo. That's not a thing. That's weird. Just know your clients. And now
Hmm.
the industry has switched to, hey, no, behavioral finance. That has a lot of weight. You can learn a lot about people and how they handle stuff with this, behavioral finance stuff. And analysis paralysis was one
Yep.
of the terms that they brought up, and you almost said that exactly. Where it's like, I, you do I do this? Do I put this investment? Do I put away this percentage? Do I put away this percentage? Do I put it in my 401k? Do I do an IRA? Oh my gosh, do I plan to retire at 62 when I get Social Security, or do I plan to retire at 65 when there's Medicare? And then there's just all this stuff, and you don't do anything.
Hmm.
The simplest thing is like, hey, just set a goal,
Yep.
take a step, and we'll adjust it. We'll roll with the punches as the curves come up. We'll correct course, and we'll go forward. So
Yeah, that's exactly it, man. That's exactly it. So I've known people who have been like really, I don't want to say terrified, but they know somebody personally, or they have a family member who maybe didn't handle the finances the way they should have been. And I think, and I don't know really how it is in the finance space. I don't know, because what I was going to say was, like, in the personal growth and self-improvement space, just becoming a better person, business person, whatever it is, you can just start and not know exactly what you need to do and just start, because I guess maybe because the if you make a failure, it's not that much of a risk as it is with finance. I think the issue here is why it's not an exact translation would be, so if I want to go to the gym, or if I want to improve my business or improve myself, I just start something. I just do something. Just take the first step. It might not be the right step. I might have to learn along the way or whatever. But I think when it comes to finance, there's a lot more risk that's involved. You see what I'm saying? Like if you take that first step and maybe that step is the wrong step, then you're kind of, it's a bigger risk. So what would you say? What would you say about that? Because I guess it depends on the person's situation. It really just depends on kind of what they have going on. But just about that.
Yeah, that's wonderful. That's actually a whole chapter in this book. And
Okay.
we basically, I think the title of the chapter is surrounding yourself with wise counsel.
Hmm.
There are thousands of talking heads, and like you said, there's so many different things you can do with your finance, and if you don't know what to do, any of them could seem like the right idea. So, like, if someone is trying to figure out what to do, they've got questions, they're scared, they're intimidated, whatever it is, seek wise counsel. Now,
Hmm.
who's the wise counsel? Do you have somebody that does taxes professionally? That's a good person to talk with. Do you have a financial advisor? That's a great person to just have a conversation with. And you'll find the vast majority of people, professionals in the finance industry, they are very willing to sit down and talk to someone without there being a hook. Hey, you got to do business with me, or hey, it's going to cost this much. Like, people, by design, people enjoy helping other people out, and
Hmm.
so if you've got questions, just approach somebody. Now, don't approach your brother-in-law, your cousin, your friend that you work with. Don't do that. Search out somebody who's in the industry, or somebody who's not in the industry, but they're where you want to be one day. That would be, if I can emphasize anything, that would be that. That would be, don't do it by yourself. Seek help. Seek wise counsel.
Hmm. That's a really good point. Don't take advice from somebody you wouldn't switch places with.
Yes, yes,
Because there's a
absolutely.
lot of that going. Man, there's no shortage of advice on the internet.
Oh yeah, yes.
I mean, you go to a comment section on YouTube. There's no shortage of people who just know every. People have a PhD in everything,
Everything. Yes, yes. Oh,
and
I
so,
love it.
man, that is such a good point. And I know maybe you're not in this space, but in the dating space, the dating coaches space, people in that space, there's a big thing about people giving advice for couples or whatever. And you look at these people and you're like, well, they're not, are they even in a relationship with somebody? Like, what is this like? And and it's just like, I don't know, man. It's just yeah, for lack of a better way to say it, take advice from the proper person in that space. Yeah.
Yes,
um
yes, absolutely.
But I think too, though, going back to, like, it's not a one size fits all. I think these people, because I mentioned, if somebody has a family member or something they saw maybe didn't manage the finances correctly, and now they had this fear, because I wanted to get back to this fear. Now they have this fear of this mindset around money. Well, that's actually, I think it might be hard for these people to see, but that's actually sort of maybe just as bad as mismanaging funds, if you have that sort of, I don't want to say scarcity, because that's a very heavy way to say it, but that sort of fearful mindset around money. It could damage you just as much as not managing right correctly.
Abs- Absolutely, absolutely. So, like, you see the swing. People will be on all the spectrums. They could be overconfident or over
Mm.
positive, and hey, it's fine if I make mistakes because there's always going to be more money. And it's like, well, that's not necessarily the case. You lose your job, you lose your house, whatever. And then you've got all the way on the other side where people are like, hey, mom and dad didn't handle money well. They lost money. I'm just going to stick everything in a savings account from now until the day I die. I'm not going to spend anything because I'm not going to be able to make the money back. And both of those are the wrong attitudes to have
Mm-hmm.
about the finances. Somewhere in the middle is a little bit
Right.
healthier. One of the things about, being fearful or seeing people not manage money very well is a personal story in our book. So a little bit of background, like I said, my father and I run a practice here in South Carolina, the Templeton group. Um, it's me and him. We run it. We've got a staff here. I grew up, my dad he's been in the industry now for 30 years. So basically my entire life, I have seen dad in this industry. I've seen him personally handle his
Mm-hmm.
finances a certain way, help clients handle their finances a certain way. I had a very wonderful childhood and upbringing. In my opinion, I think I've got a very healthy view of money, of debt, of saving, of budgeting. My dad did not grow up that way at all.
Mm.
He'll tell a story, and if you guys ever listen to our podcast, you'll hear it. He said that he didn't grow up in poverty, but poverty was next door, or poverty was in the front yard. So they were very close to it. And, both of his parents worked. They were very, save money, don't spend money. And they basically lived very close to poverty his entire life.
Mm-hmm.
And then he just made the decision one day. He said, I'm not going to be poor. I'm going to be wealthy. He didn't know what wealthy meant. He didn't know what wealthy looked like. He didn't know how he was going to do it, but he made the decision. And so if there are people who want to aspire for wealth, or they're worried, or they had an upbringing that wasn't very helpful with finances, man, the first decision is just making a decision. Like you said, just getting to the gym. That's the hardest part. That's the most important part. But
Yeah.
you do that, everything else falls into place.
Yeah, man, I appreciate you sharing that. I love that because, like I said, it's not, you don't have to know how you're going to do it. You just have to know that you are going to do it. And that's also, you bring up something good too, because, so I guess I would say in my household, money was not really something that was talked about. Like it was kind of like a hush hush type thing, when I was a child. It was not really talked about, and even in the teenage years, it wasn't really talked about like that. It was just kind of like, not really something that we got into as far as, I guess, and I don't have children, so maybe I can't comment on this, but I feel like I feel like with parents, with children, with families, there's certain things maybe you kind of educate your children on, like we were taught certain things, about the world and stuff like that. But I feel like money is one of those things, like some families just, there's absolutely no mention of it at all. And then some families, like maybe it sounds like with you, that there was, a little bit of education involved about like, this is, whatever. And so would you encourage like parents to, at the right age, of course, to sort of try to, educate their children around money? I mean, when I say money, I'm not saying like the specifics of the family finance. I'm just saying to,
Sure.
educate them about money.
Yeah, man, absolutely. I think as a parent, that is one of the most important things that you can talk about.
Hmm.
And let me flesh that out a little bit. You and I have talked about, faith and religion and pastors and churches and stuff like that. The Bible talks more about finances and money management than it does any other topic. Now, let me preface this by saying this isn't like prosperity gospel. God wants everybody to be rich, nothing like that. But just the truth of the matter is, the Bible talks about managing your finances, being a steward more than anything else in Scripture.
Hmm.
And so if you as a parent are raising kids and it's important enough for the Bible to talk about it that much, it's probably important for you to bring it up to your kids. Also, from a practical standpoint, let's say that you're not a believer. Let's say that you don't subscribe to that train of thought. In a very secular way, money is one of the most important things that a person is going to deal with. And like you already said, people aren't getting taught this in school. Like,
Yep.
think of anybody you've ever met that's gone through high school education. Did they learn about budgets? No. Did they learn about taxes? No. Did they learn about Social Security, retirement, insurance? No, the schools don't do that. And if they're not doing it, someone's got to do it. Somebody's got to teach them, or they're just going to develop bad habits. So I absolutely think that teaching your kids about finances, or at least just opening the conversation, is very, very beneficial. And it doesn't have to be anything earth shattering or this drastic change overnight. It can be as simple as you've got a 4-year-old that has a few chores around the house, and you say, "I give you $1. Hey, 10 cent we're giving to the church. 10 cent you get to save, and you get to buy a toy," or something like that. That's very simple, nothing crazy, but you
Right.
are instilling a behavior in those kids. And so another thing too is, like, if you care about your kids, you care about your heirs, you want them to live a life that's full and healthy and stuff like that, and you want them to get married and things like that. One of the number one causes of divorce in America is over finances. So if you can help prepare them for that issue ahead of time, you are basically helping your kids have a longer, healthier marriage than the neighbor next door, because they're probably not learning about it.
Right. Yeah, that's a good way to put that, man. Yeah, and I think not talking about it does several things. It does, first of all, there's sort of the ignorance aspect of it. You just don't know about, you just don't know about it. But I think also too, if you don't talk about it, it sends the message that it's something to fear. There's something to be afraid of.
Mhm.
And I'm not saying there shouldn't be a certain aspect or a certain percentage of fear involved. I mean, there definitely should be, but I don't think, like we talked about earlier, if that's all you do is fear it, then you're never going to really get anywhere with it. But so you were talking about, earlier, you were talking about when people come to you, this lady came to you and she wanted to retire, and unfortunately she probably wasn't going to be able to. So people that come to you, and I know it probably is specific to the person's situation, but people that come to you, 60, 50, 60 plus, what's the retirement age? Is it 60, 55 or 60? Somewhere approximately?
So for a lot of retirement accounts, there's you can start drawing money out at 55 or
Okay.
59 and a half. For
Okay.
Social Security, I think the earliest you can retire is 62 and start
Okay.
drawing that. So depends on which one you want to do.
Yeah, so let's say 60 plus. So the people that come to you 60 plus, and they're not able to retire because there's too much debt, or they don't have enough saved or whatever. And I know it might be kind of hard to narrow this down, but if you had to narrow it down to one common thing with those people in that space, whether it's something with mindset or psychology or lifestyle, what do you think is like a common thing these people share together in that space? So I guess it would be something, obviously something negative if they're not at the place they want to be
Yeah,
at.
it would be. I would say it would be. This is going to sound rough. It's a lack of discipline, I think.
Hmm.
Because here's the thing: between now and retirement, there is going to be an infinite number of uses for your money, and you are going to have a finite amount of money.
Hmm.
And so somebody gets to age 60 and they don't have anything. Is it because they didn't make a lot of money? Is it because they had a bunch of debt? Is it because they lost everything in the stock market? Is it because they've got grown kids that didn't move out of the house and they're basically like taking care of adult children? What is the case? Whatever it is, it stems from just a lack of discipline or a lack of planning, right? So if you make if you make the decision, hey, I'm going to go to the gym 6 days a week,
Mm-hmm.
nothing is going to get in the way of that. I'm going to work out from 5 to 6 every morning. You're going to get that done, right? You are going to develop the habit, the plan. You're going to have the discipline. It's the same thing with finances. If you never develop that, when you get to retirement, you don't know where you're going to be because you didn't have that discipline or you didn't have that plan set up.
Oh man, that's good. I actually just got chills. That's good. That's good. And I'll tell you why. Because you mentioned the gym, and I talk about this a lot. And I think what we're kind of getting to right here is identity. So it's like I think all of us, if we imagine having $1 million in the bank, all of us would probably be happy about that. Everybody would be,
Absolutely.
that'd be great.
Yeah.
But it's like, and I tell people this too, man, and you mentioned fitness. That's a good way to, because it's like, I think there's a lot of overlap with fitness and finance, because it's like it's a long-term timeline, I think, which a lot of this stuff is entrepreneurship, business, goals. A lot of these things are long-term timelines, but it's like if you want to be a millionaire, like what do those people do? Do they spend money a certain way? Do they save money a certain way? Do they invest a certain way? So it's like, are you doing these things which is ultimately going to get you that goal of becoming a millionaire, or are you just kind of hoping that one day $1 million will appear? And I think that's a good way to think about it, man, because it's like with fitness. It's, again, something that's very simple. If you want to be a fit, healthy person, then there are things that a fit, healthy person does with their time, with their life, with their diet, and all that kind of stuff. They do certain things. I mean, it's easy to think about, being 30 pounds lighter or feeling better or more energy or whatever the case is. But it's like a person who is in that space, a person who is a fit person, does things differently than a person who just wants to be fit. You see what I'm saying? So there's like an identity shift in it. And so I feel like if our goal is to have X number of dollars saved up for retirement or whatever, it's like we have to become the person that does that thing on that timeline.
Yes. That's awesome. So on our podcast that we do, we had a pastor come in, a retired pastor come in, and we were talking about, visions and vision and goal casting and stuff like that. And he brought up something where he said, hey, and it was about identity. He said, if you decide that you're a smoker and you decide that you're going to stop smoking and you go to a party and somebody offers you a cigarette, do you say, hey, I'm trying to quit, or no, I don't smoke? Very different. Very different. What is your identity? Hey, I'm trying to do something, or no, I don't do this anymore. Right. And so, like, man, that mindset, that mind shift, where you put your identity, it's so powerful. And that gets overlooked, I think, by the vast majority of people.
Well, it absolutely does. And see, here, this is the thing too, because when you do this, especially like, I'm thinking about a person, maybe not a person like specifically, but just thinking about a person who comes from a family of like poverty or something like that. And they have this, this idea that they want to save money and become a millionaire. Well, if they tell their family, who all live in poverty, that statement, that vision for themselves, they're going to be like, oh no, we've been in, I don't know, whatever they say, we've been in poverty for generations, whatever it is. But it's like, it's hard for that person to have that vision and get out of that place, which is why, and that brings us into like imposter syndrome. So they want to be that person, but they like, man, all these people around me, they're in this space, they're in this mindset, everybody's poor. Like, we nobody, what is it? Like the average, I forget, not average. It's a very high percentage of people cannot have, like, they don't have $500 in their bank account, or they can't ask their family for $500. It's some like very high percentage.
Yes. Yeah. I think it was like if 80 something percent of Americans, if they had a $500 bill show up, they wouldn't have a way to pay for it.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. And so let's say that you're in that spot. You're a person, you have $50 in your bank account, and there's never been a wealthy person in your family ever. And you have this vision that says, you know what? I want to be able to retire, and I want to have financial independence, whatever that means for that person, because it's different for everybody, whatever that means. And it's like they have this vision, but they feel like they're trying to be somebody they're not, because everybody around them is in this space. And this is where this thing like identity and the confidence to pursue this comes from, because like, and the same thing applies with business. If you're trying to start a business or improve a business or grow a business, you're going to feel like you're an imposter. This imposter syndrome comes up because you're trying to do something that you're not, like, you don't feel like you are that person. But I tell people all the time, man, and this is like, I'm getting off here, but this is like, I'm getting off on a tangent, but this is like, you don't achieve the goal. You become the person, and then as a byproduct, you do things that person is capable of achieving. And the same thing applies, I feel like, it sounds like, with finance. The same thing applies with health. The same thing applies with fitness, starting a business. Like it, and this is one thing in my personal journey, this really hits home for me, because this is one thing that I really felt in my personal journey when I started my business. It was like nobody really understood, even though I come from a family of entrepreneurs. Like, there's like, for generations, there's been entrepreneurship in my family. but nobody really understood what it was that I was trying to do. And it was really hard for me to pursue that being 20 years old because I had not built the confidence in myself to be able to pursue that. But you mentioned discipline. I knew what I wanted to do. I had a purpose that I wanted to pursue, and I was able to pursue it through that. But all that to say this, it is so important for us to be able to follow that bigger vision. And the people that are around you are not going to understand that. If you have friends that they're going out on the weekends and they're blowing money or whatever, they're not going to understand what you're trying to do with your money or your health or your fitness or your business. They're not going to understand that. And that's okay, because that's your journey. But to emphasize the identity, I think identity, becoming that person, I think is the cure for that imposter syndrome, because we feel that we're not that person when we feel, whatever we feel, but you become that person through the process. And so what does a person who's already there, who already has that money or that business or that relationship, whatever it is that you want, what does that person do? How do they live their daily life? Do those things. And as a byproduct, I think you get that as a result.
Yeah, no, that's that's awesome. I'm glad you brought that up. That's like the imposter syndrome, right? I think the vast majority of people go through that, but I mean, it's a normal thing, right? The vast majority of millionaires today did not inherit their money, so they had to just start somewhere, right? And they probably had no clue what they were doing, but they just started. Same thing. Let's take Bill Gates, right? He's wealthy, Microsoft, we've got the computers we're on right now because of him today, that kind of thing. At one point, he had never made a computer. He didn't know anything about it. So I'm sure he had imposter syndrome, but it's like you make a decision, there's that learning curve, that imposter syndrome that you got to fight, but it'll happen. It's like the gym, like finances. It's simple, but it's not necessarily easy, right? It's if I want to lose weight, I know I need to eat less and I need to exercise more. That's very simple. But I've got my cravings. Sometimes I don't want to. So it's not necessarily easy, but it's very simple. Same thing with finances, right? It's, hey, I want to retire as a millionaire. Okay, I need to save this much money a year and it needs to be invested this way. Very simple, not easy, because there's always going to be stuff pulling at your wallet.
Well, and that's why when you mentioned discipline earlier, that's why that's so important, because there are things that do test you like that. You do have the spending, the whatever, that like those things test you. But when you have a disciplined process or a disciplined plan, it helps you stick to that, even when maybe it's not what you want to do. And man, discipline is so important in so many different areas. But I think one thing, like I tell people all the time, one thing that I know I talk about fitness a lot on here on this podcast, but one thing that fitness really has taught me is the importance of sticking to that process even when you don't want to do it. And it's like the same thing, man. Like, I don't know, in the financial space, I don't know how it is, but I know in my business journey, there's been, I mean, more times than not, probably a 10-to-1 ratio that I didn't want to do things that I needed to do to improve the business or grow the business or maintain the business or whatever it was. But it's like, man, what you do when you don't want to do it is what defines what gets done,
Yeah.
because it's like, I think the dividing factor between people that succeed and fail in anything, any area, are the people that listen to that feeling of not wanting to do it when that's what they feel versus doing it because they know it needs to be done.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, I think that's the fork in the road of what really separates people in that space.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, I couldn't have said that better, man. Yeah.
Hope I didn't get off on too many tangents right here.
That was good, man. That was good.
Sometimes, like I said, sometimes I'll think of something, man, and I'll go after it. I guess that's the ambition. But but no, it's been great talking to you, man. I did want to ask you. Let me see. There was something. Well, I don't know. I think we pretty much covered a lot. Was there anything that you wanted to get into we didn't cover?
No, I'll tell you this. I think that I did this whole podcast, Cody, and didn't mention the name of the book. So the name of the book is Financial Harmony, Personal Fulfillment. I've had it been sitting here the whole time while we were talking, but That's the book. That's what it looks like. But yeah, I mean, it's about you know, years of professional experience and then years of personal experience as well, all put in here, client stories, personal stories. Um, and I guess the heart of it is like, hey, you can do it, right? Whatever it is, finances or whatever the case is, you can do it. You just got to
Mm.
set your mind to it, and then there's steps to take. Wise counsel, coaches, start putting some money away, start saving, just stuff like that. So
Yeah. Yeah, like you said earlier, man, it's simple, but sometimes it's hard, Um, and don't worry about the name of the book. I'll put it in the description. If you have a link for it too, I can list that too.
sure,
Uh,
yeah,
but yeah, man, it's been a great conversation. I think really what I love about this conversation, I didn't really anticipate this, but what I've kind of sensing from this is finance really comes down to almost like the psychology around money. Like it's like
Mm,
it's like what you think. And I've heard other people say this, like there's a psychology of money,
yes,
and I can't really tell you what that is, not being in that space, but it's like there's a mindset around it, whether or not it's gonna work out well for you or not. And I guess that comes down to what we're talking about here, like the planning, the vision, and then planning for the vision, and then the I don't want to say confidence because that puts a different spin on it, but the I guess the courage of maybe feeling that fear to do that thing, to invest that money, to save that money or whatever it is,
yeah,
and then the discipline. It's all those things sort of wrapped up in
yeah,
something.
yeah. The psychology of money. That's so true. So, I mentioned earlier, I'm a CFP, a certified financial planner. Part of the curriculum that you go through when you're getting that designation is they talk about like behavioral finance, the psychology of money, and stuff like that. And it's very, very interesting stuff. But the great thing about that is you may have grown up in generation after generation after generation of poverty. You may be in poverty yourself right now, and you think, hey, that's just the way it is. Well, if you start to learn a little bit about the psychology of money, you learn who you are,
Hmm.
you can adapt, or you can put measures in place to not do that. So again, somebody who is overweight, they're wanting to lose they're wanting to lose weight, they want to lose X amount, but they just really love potato chips. It's like, hey, that about yourself. It's not the end of the world that you love potato chips. Now we just need to figure out a way to handle it. It's the same thing with finances. Hey, you feel this way about the money. That's not the end of the world. Now that you know yourself, you can do something about it. And so, I'm glad you brought up psychology and money. I'm glad.
You know what? And I'm glad that you brought that up because that's such a good point. Because I'm going to offer a little mindset shift to this right here. Okay. And I don't know if I'm wrong about this in the finance world. Please let me know. Please correct me at any moment. But a person, so let's say the fitness and health space, if they know that they love the potato chips, first of all, the awareness of that is absolutely critical because you have to know what inspires you, what motivates you, where you weak at, where your temptations at. You have to know these things about yourself. Okay, so if a person is in that space and they know they love the potato chips, if they offer to give, and I can't give a number, this has to come from the person, but if they offer to give themselves, X number of times per week, they'll allow themselves those potato chips. That becomes then a motivator, for that sort of cheat day, as we call it, a cheat day for that, it becomes a motivator. So I don't know, does maybe the same thing apply in the financial space? Like maybe if you save, I don't know, whatever X number of dollars per week, maybe you give yourself once a month, you can spend X number on, something miscellaneous or whatever. I mean, maybe that's a good
Absolutely.
motivator.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because here's the thing. Here's the thing. If you are starting out today and you save no money, you invest no money, and then you say, hey, I'm going to invest X amount of dollars every week. And then at the end of the month, I'm going to make kind of a big purchase.
Yep.
Okay. You were already doing that. Now you've just started to put money away. So now
Mm-hmm.
you're not denying yourself everything, but you're better than where you started. Yeah, you're still spending the money, but you're not spending it willy-nilly every week. You are denying yourself some, you're putting it away, and then at the end of the month, hey, I am farther ahead today than I was last month. Let me do that. So,
Yeah.
we talk about this a little bit in the book as well. You know, you saving money, you're sticking to the plan, you get a little bit of extra. Take your wife, take your girlfriend out to dinner, whatever it is. Go do that. Hey, you saved a little bit of money. You guys have always been you've been wanting to go down to Charleston for a 3-day vacation or whatever. Do it. Do it. Like, if you are following the steps, you can absolutely set goals for yourself to enjoy that, to reward yourself. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. And see, the thing here is that what we're talking about here is you can reward yourself for these like short-term goals, these monthly goals or whatever they are. You can reward yourself. And I say to people all the time, man, like, you can be like, you'll hear people say like, I'm my own worst enemy or whatever, I like the things I say to myself or, whatever. But what that means, because there's a law of polarity. So what that means is the opposite also exists. So you can also be your own best friend. So, and dude, we're talking about building wealth. We're talking about, losing weight. We're talking about building a business. You're going to need to be good friends with yourself. You know what I mean? Because these are going to be, these are challenging paths. And so like, I just think it's really important to be aware of that and understand that, like, you don't have to tyrannize yourself. You can be your own best friend. Like, if you set a goal for that month, whether it's finance or whatever, and you hit that goal, then if you reward yourself, maybe that becomes, like I said, the spending or the potato chips in that example, it becomes a motivator to pursue that goal.
Yes.
And then, that gets us off on the like trusting yourself because you keep the promises that you make to yourself. I tell people all the time, I think the best way to build self-confidence is to keep those promises you make to yourself. Because if I tell you a thing and, like, let's say I don't follow through with it, well, you're going to lose some trust for me and credibility for me. The same thing with ourselves. If we tell ourselves that we're going to do something, save X number of dollars this month, or, whatever for fitness plan or whatever, if we do those things over a long enough time period, that's when we build the confidence with ourselves. And we basically keep the promises that we say to ourselves. And then when you have these things like imposter syndrome come up, or then when you want to start a new business or start savings and all this kind of stuff, and you have this thought that says, oh, well, nobody in my family has ever done this, I can't do this, who do I think I am? No, then you can refer back and say, oh man, well, I trust myself. Like, I trust this inner guidance from myself, because I've kept these promises to myself, and I've built this relationship with myself. So maybe nobody else around me has done it. Maybe nobody believes in it. Maybe I'm sort of against the grain right here, but you can rely on that intuition from yourself.
Yeah. Henry Ford, I believe it was Henry Ford, had a quote where he said, the person who says he can and the person who says he can't are both usually right. And so it's like, look, yeah, you can come from any background at all. If you set your mind to it, you can do it. As simple as that.
Yeah. Well, it's like your dad. I mean, your dad did that,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Like he came from a place where, and I think that's actually a really good story, man, because he came from a place where it sounds like nobody around him was teaching him these things. And now he's helping other people. It sounds like for several decades there, he's been helping people in that space. And I mean, that's just incredible. But man, we can keep going. I know you got things you got to probably do, but so while you're here, I know you have the book. Do you have any other links you want to share? Do you have links to, I know you said the book is, what was it again? And we'll put it in the description, but
Financial Harmony, Personal Fulfillment. And it's
okay.
We're selling it on Amazon. You can get the paperback, hardback, or Kindle version. So,
okay. So usually when somebody comes on the podcast, they have some sort of website they want to share or something like that. Do you have anything along those lines?
Yeah. If I can email you afterwards the website, our personal website, and then the podcast as well.
Okay. Oh yeah. I forgot about that actually. So, do you want to announce the name of that while you're here? Do you just want to?
Yeah. So the podcast is My Father Said, and it's me and my dad, and we talk about faith, finance, and family, and that's about it.
Okay. Nice. Where is that YouTube or Spotify or?
Yeah, it's on. So everything gets put on YouTube. Everything gets put on Spotify, Apple Podcast.
Okay.
I think Amazon has got something you can listen to it on as well. And
Amazon
then we've
Music.
got a business Facebook page where all those videos get shared there as well. So really, anywhere you listen to podcasts, you can find us.
Okay. Yeah, like I said, if you have some links for all this stuff, I'll put them in the descriptions of the video. So one thing I ask everybody before we close, if you could share one of the most important or most valuable lessons you've ever learned, it could be something from your personal life if you're comfortable sharing it, or your career. What do you think is one of the most valuable lessons you've ever learned?
Yeah, so integrity matters when integrity doesn't matter. So I've never been in a situation where, like, you know, my integrity's been compromised and like there's this big fallout and stuff that you hear about sometimes. Um, I've been around people who have been in those situations, a pastor that messes up and loses
Mm-hmm.
his church, husband that wasn't faithful to his wife, and marriage is over and stuff like that. And the theme, after the fact, nobody ever does something like that and then think, man, that was the best decision I've ever made. Like it messes stuff up. Like when you have these lapse of moral character or lapse of integrity. And so the thing that we've picked up is like integrity matters when it doesn't matter. So even if it's not convenient, even if it's not fun, having integrity it's it's the difference between where you are today, meeting your goals, or your life falling into shambles, basically. And I know integrity, that can seem a little overkill, right? Lack of integrity is gonna ruin your life, but I mean, it's happened. So
Mm. Well, see, I love the reason that I love that you bring that up is because it relates to everything that we're saying right here. It relates to having that vision for yourself, because most of us out here, man, nobody's going to save us to a million other than ourselves. You know what I mean? We had to say,
yeah.
we had to put the money back. We had to invest. And so you're exactly right. What's the quote? Character is determined by what you do when no one's looking, or whatever,
Oh yeah.
you
Yep.
know? And so if you have that bank account and you're trying to grow it, or, whatever, and you just, I mean, man, maybe it's just your private account and nobody knows. Maybe you can take the money out and nobody would ever know the difference,
Yep.
but it's like, again, going back to that, what do you do when nobody's looking? Do you have that integrity? First of all, do you have that integrity with yourself? And I know the example you're talking about, there's other people that are involved. And so it's amplified at that point. So, yeah, I think that's an incredibly important lesson for sure. Yeah. Listen, man, it's been a great time with you. Been a great time talking to you.
Yeah. Thank you for having me on, man. This was a blast.
For sure. I do appreciate it. So I'm going to close the video. If you can hang out for just a second, I'll explain
Sure.
to you like the upload and all that good stuff. But definitely appreciate your time and insight here today. Hey guys, I appreciate you tuning in today. If you enjoyed this episode, you can find more content at Pure Wisdom Podcast. This is on Facebook, Instagram, Rumble, TikTok, YouTube, Spotify, Amazon Music, and Apple and Google Podcasts. There you can like, share, subscribe, and we will see you next time.